Today, we're going to focus on learning from other people's mistakes. So stay tuned. Welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey toward publication. My name is Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
And I'm Jamie Hirschberger. I write short fiction under the pen name J.R. Nichols.
Good morning, everybody. Or I guess I shouldn't say good morning, because you could be listening to us at like 10 p.m. when you finally get around to it, because we appreciate you. If you are in our chat, you know how much we love our chatters, but we also appreciate those of you that listen to us as a podcast. If you do enjoy this podcast, please share with your friends, like, subscribe, wherever you're listening to us. Do all the things to help us to reach other Christian writers to join this community and grow this community. All right, so welcome to the show. We like to start every episode with our What's Up, where we take a moment to talk with each other and see what's going on with our daily lives. And so, Jamie, what is up with you?
Oh, no, we have to have me second, because remember, we didn't think about this.
Okay. We also,
all right, what's up with you, Jen?
We also said, who's going to host? I can host.
Yeah.
I can host. And then I hit the button and I'm like, we didn't decide. So I'm hosting, because I was like, didn't say. So,
oh gosh.
Okay. So, once again, we did not, because we had our live Q&A this week. If you are not on our Patreon, this is what we do once a month, is we do a live Q&A, which, if we're being honest, I did answer we had some questions. I felt like I did give some advice this month, but generally it's a chat time to laugh with each other and to kind of hang out with those patrons that are just our friends now. And so if you would like to do that, the link is in the show notes. But we had our live Q&A this week, so we didn't have our regular meeting for the show at the regular time. We did it a different day, and guess what? Once again, I came to log in, and I had not made the podcast. There was nothing. I hadn't done the artwork. I hadn't done, and it was like 10 minutes before the show was supposed to go live. So, anyways, I went into I use the app I use Photoshop, and I use a thing called PicMonkey, which I have been with PicMonkey from the inception. I found them because back in the day I had a blog. That's a whole other story. And my dad's calling.
Oh.
Should I answer it live? No. Back in the day I had a blog and I found out about PicMonkey anyway. So I use PicMonkey. So I go into PicMonkey and I'm searching for something to use, and I come across this gem.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Forever ago, and I wish I could figure out the date. I probably could figure out the date. Forever ago, somebody made a comment about us just like going to the same retirement home someday and like living out the rest of our lives together. And I made this image very poorly. For those of you that are listening, it's a very poorly photoshopped image of the four of us in a retirement home. And in like house dresses. It's great. And I put it in our conversation in our chat, and nobody said a word. And for like months, I thought, oh, I offended somebody. And it wasn't until like a long time later that I made a comment about this, and nobody had seen it. Like, it just, our chat had gone so fast that nobody had seen it. So here it is, not only for the podcast ladies to take a look at it again, but for everyone else to see. This is us someday in the nursing home, hanging out with each other.
I love it. And you want to know what's funny is I'm like, I think I might own or have at one time owned this similar night dress. So I am practicing. I'm in costume role playing this on a regular basis.
My mom and my grandmother always had these. Always. Like, I remember, like, every time they would get up in the morning, they'd throw one of these on, and they would, start their day with one of these. So I don't even know if you can buy these anymore. I don't know where you would go, but anyway, that made me laugh really hard by myself in my office this morning. So I thought, you know what? Why am I the only one that gets to enjoy this? Everyone else should get to see it as well. So that is my what's up for today.
I appreciate that. And I want to say hi, Kathy, in the chat, and Meg. Meg says, hey, I made it to the live for once. We're
Yay.
so glad you're with us, Meg.
Yep.
Piper's here. Hi,
Kathy.
hi, Piper.
You're
And
going.
good morning, Sunshine, Catherine Carroll. Ooh, SL Perrin says she's been writing. So yay. And
That's
she's
awesome.
finally coming up for air. That's great. It's so great when you get a breakthrough like that. Got some support in the chat for her from Piper. Catherine says our muumuus are very stylish.
Yes.
I think they wear house dresses, not muumuus. A muumu would be Mrs. Roper. I don't know.
My mom always called it a house coat.
House
I don't know why,
because it
but
had buttons.
I guess so. Yeah, a little
If it has
snap.
buttons, it's the house coat. Yes. My mother and I used to wear those all the time too. And FYI, you can still buy them.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Good to know.
Yep. And her mother-in-law, not
Oh,
mother-in-law. Oh, I thought you were just like, hey, I own it. I used to wear them. I thought Piper was like, an old soul. Christy says, morning. Only Christy here. Sadie is out at the aquarium with her sister who drove up from Miami. That's awesome.
that means Christy might be quasi-local to me. We need to connect.
Kathy says she has one and she calls it a house coat. Kathy, we may need to see pictures of it in the Facebook group. We may need the evidence of the. All right, here's the thing. We need to start a thread in the Facebook group where everybody who has one is posing in it for us all to see that they.
That's a great idea. Pictures or it didn't happen, right?
Or go out and get one because Med McDonald says they're at Walmart. So Walmart has everything except for our Walmart.
You got a gift card for Mother's Day that's just burning a hole in your pocket. There you go. Your family will be like, oh, we're glad you got something that you enjoy.
Exactly. All right, that's my what's up, Jamie. What is up with you?
Okay, so as I hinted, today's what's up from me ties very closely to our podcast episode topic, which today is learning from other people's mistakes. And as the intro music was playing today, Jen, I was sort of like, I think our podcast corpus is basically learning from other people's mistakes.
The same thing. I was going to crack that joke as we entered into the topic today. Like, everything on this show is learned from our mistakes. Like, I don't know why we're having a whole podcast on this. Like, it's what we do.
I know, like thinking about it. And I'm just like, we are like fodder for haters. I mean, I wonder, the people who like to just hate stuff, like we give them. Okay. So, but anyway. All right. Now, I had a situation going on where I felt like I couldn't hear so good out of one ear. And what I remembered, and please, please don't jump in if you kind of figure out where I'm going, because I did not know. Okay. I was pretty ignorant, but my little sister had mentioned to me that she had done a practice called candling to get excess earwax out of her ear. Okay. And so, like, as she's describing to me, I guess you place a candle in your ear and then you light it, and then the wax is drawn out of your ear and into the hollow candle. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, wow, happy birthday to you, kind of thing. And also I'm thinking, like, solo project, no problem, So I go and I equip myself with one of these candles, and I'm looking at the
They're a specific candle, right? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought you were going to say, that you just took a regular candle in there. An ear candle is a specific thing. Okay,
it's a specific thing. And they had them at Walmart while you're there getting your house dress. You could, okay. So
you can get an ear candle.
I read the directions. I had water nearby. Okay. But somehow it didn't. And my plan was, because they even say this is a very relaxing experience, because of course, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, it's homeopathic, it's bunk, it isn't real. But they will say there are therapeutic benefits from just kind of listening to the crackle of the, you know what I mean? Like there's lots of, well, my plan was to just lay in my bed and relax with this candle. And, you put like a circle of paper or something around it to like catch any drips or ash that falls or something. But like, look at this thing.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
It's if you're tuning in, like, do you remember those pencils they gave you when you were a preschooler that are really fat so that you could easily write your ABCs? When you light this thing, it looks like a torch for going into the caves with Indiana Jones. And I'm like, Okay. Then I'm looking at my bed, which is made of foam, and I'm thinking, if I drop this, my entire mattress is going to just go whoosh and
Whoosh.
be engulfed in flames. I will likely roast alive. And if I get out, my landlord will be like, "You are so dumb. Why did you take a flaming candle to bed with you?"
Right.
And so here's cautionary tale. Do not do this as a solo project. And that way, somebody else can be like controlling what is going on with this and
Right.
possibly do it like in a chair or like some place that is not a memory foam mattress that will poof into flames should you happen to drop your flaming torch. And man, you should have seen the flame on it. It was like, I mean, it was crazy. So that is my cautionary tale where you can learn from my experience.
Also, maybe don't buy them at Walmart because that was not my experience with ear candles, and they look different. They're a little bit the ones we had were a little bit more cone, not
Yeah.
so pencil-like,
Hmm.
and they were not it was literally like just it kinda just smoldered on the top.
Oh my gosh, this thing. And
Oh, yeah,
so I
maybe
don't
not.
know too. Maybe I didn't follow the direct. Like maybe I should have cut this top part. Like I mean, there's many things. I guess I could cut it in half. But anyway, I'm not.
Yep,
I'm just not. Not unless
yeah.
I have a friend. And yes, Kirsty says, "Well, you'll be able to hear again if you survive."
Yes. Like I said, there won't be any wax buildup in your ear at that point. Everything will have melted.
Oh, that's terrific.
Oh,
So
golly.
yes, and that is my cautionary tale. So if you were ever curious about your candling, and I did not get a great value brand, Jen. I will have to look and see what brand it is. Maybe post it in the Facebook group. Which, if you're not in our Facebook group, you should be.
Yes, exactly.
So there we go. That's
Yeah.
what you can learn from me today.
So, um, yeah, I would say maybe not the Walmart thing, but, yeah, that's a great tale, Jamie. But so the reason we came out with this topic idea of today, for those of you that are just tuning in, today is learning from others' mistakes, is that if you recall last week, if you tuned in last week, somebody brought up, Jamie brought up that there was some sort of book like conference slash book fair that had become like the internet was like eating it up because it had been such a disaster. And I was going to play the video. I was going to try to find the video of me. Like I was so excited to hear the tea. I was just like, what? Because I didn't know anything about it and I wanted to hear all about it. And so our friend Meg had messaged in the Patreon group that there was like what it was exactly, and she sent us some videos. And let me tell you, it's very salacious. It is very like kind of crazy. So what we want to do first, so this is how that topic came up, is we were like, we got it, we got the tea, we were all like, oh my gosh. But really there are some lessons to learn too. So first of all, we're going to recap the event, right, Jamie? So
Mhm.
you were the first one to bring it to my attention. So tell me how you found out about it and what you heard.
Well, all over social media, there has been discussion about the Million Lives Book Conference. And funnily enough, the first thing I saw was the apology and promise for refunds. And it was so funny because it was just a woman saying, "Hello, everybody who attended this conference or whatever. Just so you know, things didn't go as expected." I'm not sure, I'm abbreviating. And then she's like, "If you want a refund, please let me know, blah, blah, blah." And I'm just like, what? And so you know how it is. You're like,
Yeah.
what is she apologizing for? Right.
Yeah, let's
And
go
so,
look.
yes. And so
Right.
I went to go on this little rabbit trail, and it was something called a Million Lives Book Conference, apparently. Did somebody say that it was in where? Do we know where the location of it was?
Oh, maybe someone in chat will tell us because
Hmm.
I don't remember, but yeah,
Yeah. And so, yeah, it just,
it was for fantasy authors and fantasy romance authors. So I think there was quite a few of that. And there was this promise that there was going to be Baltimore. Christy said it was in Baltimore. Hundreds of authors coming in. There's supposed to be hundreds of fans coming to this, kind of like a Comic-Con, but for readers and writers, which sounds really great, right? Especially once you if you are an author and you see the list of other authors that are going to be there and you like, oh, they have a lot of fans. I want to meet their fans to introduce my book to their fans. So I'm going to sign up and do this. Right. And so
Mhm.
it cost authors to get in. It was I believe $150 non-refundable. You guys can go watch the videos. Like we're going to
Mhm.
give you just a quick, but there are authors that went to this that will give you all the deets. But it was like
Mhm.
$150. Plus you could sponsor things for more, like it would be like advertising that you could pay for. Um, and it was supposed to be like this big Comic-Con kind of thing that if you paid extra, and we're talking hundreds of dollars extra, you got to go to this big ball at the end of the weekend. Now imagine if you're into fantasy, especially fantasy romance, imagine getting to dress up like a character or in a very fancy dress and go to a ball. Who gets to go to balls nowadays? I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
exactly, royalty. I'm not going to balls. It would be so much fun. Like if someone offered this to Christian romance fans and writers, I would totally like love to do that if it were like legit, right? Well, everything was disaster. Nothing was as it said. The ball was literally a ballroom, empty, no music, no food, like just some tables, and people walk into this. And because the event was so disastrous, because the hundreds of people that were supposed to show up, there were like between 30 and 80, depending on the day. There were
You
less
mean like readers?
readers. There were less readers here than there were writers. And s- I don't so then there were I don't know, over 100, like 150, I want to say, writers, and like somebody reported that only like 30 of the writers showed up for the ball because the writing was already on the wall. They're like, this is going to be disaster. Everything else is disaster. I'm not wasting my time. Maybe they already went home because I mean, it costs money to ship your books and go to something like this. Some people flew in from other areas, and well, they invested money into this thinking that they were going to make the money back, and it was an absolute disaster, it appears.
Yeah, and so when we were talking about this during our Q&A session, it came to mind for both Jen and I that, and also we got Tina, yay! If we were ever to do an event, there were some lessons there for us. And that's what prompted this podcast episode, because we figured if we can learn from the mistakes of this event organizer, then
Mhm.
possibly in the writing realm, there are lessons to be learned from other people who have made mistakes ahead of us so that we don't make those same mistakes.
Exactly. Um, and so one of the problems we talked about that we were noticeable in everybody's TikToks and their reels was there was poor communication
Mm,
between the the writers that were there and the person that was running it. There was
mm,
also really poor advertising. I think that all of the effort put in by the organizer was to advertise to the writers to get them there, but not so much to
mhm,
get to the readers. And we talked about this. Tina was with us this week in the Q&A, which she thought she'd be able to be with us today, but the Q&A kind of like wore her out. So she's like, I don't know if I should come back this soon. So continue to pray for Tina. But she had been to something similar. It was on a smaller scale, but had the same experience where the writers who paid for tables were there, but the readers didn't show up. So again, um, like the expectations weren't met because where was the money spent? Well, the amount of money was spent to get the readers there. The organizer still has their money because they got paid, right, by the writers, but how are you going to get the readers in? So
mhm.
there were last minute changes that happened. There were technical issues. Like, well, I mean, technical issues. There was no band. There was no DJ. Like the only music at this ball was the security guard felt bad, went home and grabbed like a Bluetooth speaker and played music from his phone for them. Like that was how bad this thing was. So, um, yeah. So those were the problems. So then, what are some of the lessons that we would get from that? Like, what were some of the things
Yeah.
that you were saying, Jamie, when we were talking earlier?
Well, you have to know your audience and your purpose. I mean, how do you get readers to an event? You have to think what things are going to draw a reader. I think finding vendors is not problematic. There are people with goods who would like to sell, but they need people to sell too. Um, and you're going to disappoint your vendors if you don't appropriately provide them with people to sell to. So you've got to clearly know your purpose so that it occurs to you, hey, I need to get people into the building to buy these books.
Right.
So if you don't have a clear ideal of what your audience and your purpose is, you're headed for disaster.
Right. And I think that clarity and communication, mostly honesty, straight up honesty, which feels like it was not happening in this situation, is also key too. Like when we finally are able to host events like we are planning on, we want to be very clear with what exactly the expectations are. And I feel like that the expectations were inflated for what these authors could expect from what this organizer could actually produce for them. So
Yeah, and like everybody, I'm always on the side of giving the benefit of the doubt for this organizer. And so I'm thinking like maybe she just didn't accurately vet her, suppliers. She didn't go with companies that were reputable, possibly. She didn't look for professionalism. And those things matter when you're putting on an event like this. Like you don't want to get the cheapest guy possible to promise to show up with your goodie bags. Now, I'm just kind of, I don't know, confabulating excuses or reasons or whatever. I guess I'm putting myself into her shoes to find out, like, if I had an event that was this kind of a disaster, what would have been the reasons? And
right.
I'm saying, like, if I didn't vet these vendors, possibly I could be also standing there holding the bag for somebody else's unprofessionalism.
On the flip side of that coin, how much vetting did the writers do for this organizer? Like,
Very true.
because I don't know that the organizer had ever done an event. Like, was there a history of events that have been done, or was it just so exciting that someone's finally doing an event like this? And it,
You have a really good point there, because you
yeah,
want to be the victim, but maybe you're a victim of your own failure to really vet out what you're signing on to do.
which I feel about, like, so there are some Facebook groups that I'm in that are Michigan writers, and they are always having some sort of event similar to, like, trying to get writers to come down to, it's a Detroit area. Um, but I don't see them putting the work into like advertising the event out into the public. And it's generally not very, we talk about as writers to niche down. Like, don't imagine when you're writing your book that everybody is your audience. They're not. Niche down to that one person that is your audience. And the same thing with events like this. Who is your specific everyone in Detroit is not going to want my book. And so an event full of writers hoping to pull readers in cannot be every genre. I just don't think it'll work, because if you put me next to someone who writes spicy stuff and is going to be selling crocheted phallic items, which is something that happened at this event, yet children were attending this event because there wasn't clear communication on what was the expectation. Like, it's just not going to work. So I think that vetting who the person is, what they're doing, and looking at a history of what they've done would have helped too, because that's a lot of money that they were investing
It
into
is
this.
a lot of money. And I mean, this whole perspective, Jen, is like really kind of flipped my brain about this scenario. I mean, everybody wants to heap on the event organizer, but at what point are you accountable for your business decision to partake? I mean, it's a risk. It's a risk to put time and make an investment into an event. And you have to own some of that risk, because maybe people just wouldn't buy your stuff, even if like 500 people showed up at the event. So what is the accountability for the organizer to put on a good event for you versus your accountability for making sure this is something you want to participate in? That's a really good way to look at it. I hadn't thought about that position.
Christy's given us some good scripture in the quote in the chat. She says, "Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance." Proverbs 1:5. And then it says, "Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a righteous man, and he will increase in learning." Agreed. I think that in all of this, we have to, first of all, we have to represent Christ in everything we do, including when things go wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so even though, like, I was like, "Ooh, give me the tea," there was a part of me that like was like, however, I know that people were hurt financially and just emotionally in this whole thing. So when we talked about it, when Jamie and Tina and I talked about it, like we have been talking for years about doing writing retreats, and it is something that is still on the back burner, something that we still really want to do. And what do we learn from this? So just really quickly, we're going to caps. What we've learned from this, first of all, is we would not go big. When we do our first writing retreat, it's going to be an intimate one. And maybe that's all we ever do, are intimate ones. And maybe we do them around the country to make it more accessible to people. Or um, but we're going to start small and start trying to do big. Excuse me.
Start small and let it grow. That seems to be wisdom. And as a strategic thinker, it makes sense just to me to I mean, you can even look at it as like the prototype, and possibly, and I guess leading into it is the next thing we learned is communication is key. Very
Yes.
much communicate what the attendee is going to expect from your event. And for us, we are going to give you time to write your book.
Yes.
And this is something that we discuss. If you don't do the writing, that's on you, but you're not going to be able to say that there was not any time for you to actually sit in the chair and put your butt in the chair, as Jen would say, and write. And so, for example, that would be communicated. And if this was like a prototype event and we're looking for feedback to maybe invite more people next time, we would clearly communicate that. We would communicate exactly what the attendees would expect, so that it makes for everybody to have just a better experience, because there aren't any surprises. And disappointment is it's like unmet expectations is
Yes.
the father of disappointment, right?
Right. And for us, if we are playing a writing event and it gets and we all go and we have a great time, but we're all chatting all the time and there isn't really any structure and nobody in charge of keeping the chatting down, then we have not provided what was expected, right? So that's
Right.
something that,
Mhm.
and we've already talked about this. We actually already have a whole schedule. Like we already have imagined this, what it's going to look like, and it's going to be awesome. But again, in the future. But so when we look at this, a little bit of us were, it was kind of funny with very little bit of like, ooh, spill the tea. But then there was also like, we need to learn from this. Like when we do an event, we don't want this kind of experience for the people that will spend the money to come to our event.
Now, if you're just, Susie lonesome writer in your little introverted bubble who is never ever ever going to put on a writing retreat or a writing event, you might be like, how is this applicable to us? But we thought it made a good episode because there are some broader mistakes that a writer can make that if they would just look and see where others have gone and possibly failed before them, they could avoid
Yes. I think one of the first
them.
things that we need to talk about that I feel like many writers do is publishing too soon, not editing enough, trying to rush it to market. If Tina were here, she would share her story. She didn't rush it to market, but she rushed it out to readers, like to get like beta readers without really editing. And she got back because she was so excited. It was her first book and she was super excited and she threw it out there for everybody like as beta readers, and it wasn't ready, and she got so much feedback of things that need to be fixed from so many people because she had sent it to so many people that it was overwhelming to her.
Mhm.
So don't try to rush your book. That would be one of the first things I would say.
Yes, and I would agree with that. It's very tempting to think, well, and honestly, to be fair, um, 15 years ago, goodness, I'm old or whatever, when Amazon was brand new, it was like, hurry up and throw something out there because
Mm,
books are selling like hotcakes. And it's just a different world and a different market now. And you want to make sure that you're putting out something quality. And
absolutely.
speaking of something quality, watch out for like the vanity press pitfalls, which
Yes.
it's so amazing that that's still around
I
in this
know.
age of self-publishing, but I think
I
people
know.
just don't know. I think most people think the only way to publish is to get a publisher and, sign on with Penguin or Random House or something. And then they fall for the vanity publishers, right?
Right, and especially in the Christian realm, Christian writing realm, it's like
Oh, yeah.
they target Christian writers, and I don't get it. I think a lot of it is still kind of like the little old grandma who's had a book in her heart all these years, and she finally finishes it, and they're an advertising on TV. of all things pops up about a publishing house, or they because of algorithms, they somehow search something on Google about publishing, and all of a sudden they're getting like emails or like advertisements from these vanity publishers. Do your research. Chances
Please.
are, if somebody reaches out to you, I hate to say this because it's not always true, but 99.9% of the time, if somebody reaches out to you, it's a scam. Whether it
Mm,
is for publishing, whether it is for promotion.
modeling.
I would know that
Remember
was
like
a scam.
Barbizon or whatever? Like
Yes.
they would prowl the malls and try to sign you up. Yeah.
Yeah. So if anybody asks you for money, run. Like that's like the number one thing, but do your research. Come to our Facebook group and ask. Go like just Google it. Like whatever publishing company it is that is contacting you, put their name in Google and write scam next to it and see what pops up.
You know
You
what the worst, sorry, go ahead.
no, that's fine.
The worst thing is, like Steve Martin did this movie called Leap of Faith way a long time ago. And I just keep thinking about how he would press on these people's faith, their sincerely held religious belief to swindle money out of them. And these marketing campaigns do that. They will say, you know, don't you want to reach the world for Christ? Like you really have this sincere belief that God wants your book out there, and they know you do. And
Yeah.
they will say those words to you and kind of make you believe that this is your sign and this is your, it's so gross. Like it really kind of makes me angry.
Yeah. I,
But people want to make money off of that.
yes. Kathy says they prey on vulnerable people who have a dream to write, and they particularly persuasive because of their name, like Christian Publishing Company.
So
Yes,
right.
they'll use Christ's name in order to swindle somebody, and it is disgusting. So learn from other
So
people's mistakes because it's
yes.
all over the internet. That's what I'm saying. If you go to Google, put the name in with scam, or even come to our Facebook group and ask, it's all over the internet. So learn from the mistake that other people have made.
Oh, so Jen, I'm looking at the outline, and the next thing we're going to talk about is marketing missteps. And let me
Mm.
just tell you, I already dread marketing, not then to find out that there are pitfalls. Oh no, you know, it further complicates things.
I just think that that when you're new to writing, you think that all you have to do is write the book, and then you're going to put it on social media, and then you're going to make $1 million, and that is not how it works. If you start an Instagram account, never had one before, and all you do is start posting about your book, nobody cares. That's not how
Mm-mm.
marketing works. If you want to market your book, you have to learn marketing, and it's not an overnight thing, and it takes time. And again, learn from other people's mistakes. You can watch some of our older videos. You can watch, there's lots of other writing podcasts out there that talk about marketing. Learn from people's mistakes and from their experiences, and learn how to market. We had when we first, I don't, it wasn't first start. We were about a couple of years old. This podcast, because we've been doing this for a while. And we had a gentleman reach out to us on Twitter at the time, and he wanted us to promote his book. And we told him, well, that's not what we do. And he started harassing us and started saying us, you support Christian writers. Oh, you like encourage, like, because of our tagline, like, and he just would not stop. We had to block him. Like, we're like, wow, this is not going to get you anyway. God bless you and your Christian book that you just wrote. It was so he. I don't know why people think that like it's someone else's responsibility just because you're a Christian, that it's someone else's responsibility to promote your book. It's not. It's all 100% on you.
Mm. Yeah, if you're going to do the indie route, that means that you take on all of it. And, you know, Jen kind of hinted you can't just post, they call it spamming, right? You
Mhm.
can't join a bunch of Facebook groups that, you know, you think are going to have readers in them, or, you know, and some of the advice out there is like, if you wrote a book about someone who's a fisherman, go and join fisherman groups. And I almost kind of feel like, you would already be in those groups if you really were like the kind of person to become besties with that kind of person. And eventually people are going to be wise to you that you're only around because you're trying to sell a book. You know what I mean? Which,
Yes.
I mean, I guess, whatever arguments can be made for that working. But anyway, these are just kind of the don'ts. If you want to get into the do's, please tell me what they are, because I really need to brush up, especially in the year of our Lord 2025, where things are probably way different than the last time I looked around. But do not go to social media and spam links. Like that, I know for sure. That's
Agreed.
a don't.
Honestly, I know that some people have found some success with book talk, but there's a lot of people who haven't too. So just because a few people say, "Oh, book talk is where to be," it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So honestly, focusing on social media trends is not what you should be focused on. Focus on writing the book, and then writing the next book, and then writing the next book. Really, what's going to sell your book is having many books out there. People want to know that you're an established author. They want to, if they find a book of yours that they like, they want to read all of them. They don't really, people really aren't interested in finding an author that has one book out there. No matter how great your book is, readers want to read. And so they're looking for people that have lots of books out there. So write the next book, and you're only going to continue to get better as you do it.
Yeah, and if you want people to pick up your book and even give it a chance, it has to have a good cover. And this is
Yes, that's the
another
next thing.
area. People they don't want to spend the money on the cover. They don't understand why the cover is important. They just are too inexperienced to understand that their cover is putting people off. There's an old saying, "Don't judge a book by its cover," but I almost feel like those kind of adages exist to correct people, because that is what people do, and they do judge your book by its cover.
Absolutely.
Literally. So
and I get not wanting to spend the money on a cover, trust me, but if you don't want to spend the money, then you're going to spend your time, which is also money. So if you don't want to spend the money on the cover, then you need to spend the time learning software. You need to spend the time learning composition and learning what trends are in book covers, and working that and doing it that way. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect and that you're going to do an awesome job, but maybe you will have an artistic eye and be able to do it. I'm not saying that you can't, because I know people that do their own covers and they're beautiful. I also know people that do their own covers and they're not. But honestly, like, at least at the very least, you have to know trends. Like, you have to know your genre and what the genre trends are for book covers. But you can't think that you can just slap anything on there and put it up there. It just won't work.
Well, and 9 times out of 10, when I look at a book and I'm like, this person just doesn't know, right? And so I'm like, I'm gonna take a peek at the look inside, because who knows if a gem is hiding in this, someone who's ignorant to the industry cover, because it could be somebody who wrote a great book but doesn't know about covers. But a lot of the times, the inside matches the outside, right? And so people then feel justified to pass up books that don't have good covers, because they've been there, done that.
You're nicer than me. If it's a bad cover, I don't even bother. I don't have time. Like, I don't have time for bad books. Like, before Kindle, I was one of those people that I had to finish a book no matter how bad it was. And I've thought about that for a while. And I really think it was because I was still in the mindset that those gatekeepers, the book publishing company, would not publish a book unless it was good, right? Which is not true, because I have read plenty of books by quote unquote famous authors. There was one recently, it's an older book. They've published more books from this woman. So it's not as if, like, after this book, they're like, I got it at the library at a sale. You know how they'll sell books. And so I started reading it, and I was just like, oh, and I got about 2 chapters in, and I'm like, I don't know. So I went to Amazon and I looked at reviews, and terrible reviews, people slamming it, how this author was very insensitive, how she handled the event, and how unhistorical the book was just in order to fit her love story. Like,
wow.
it was bad. I got rid of the book, and I'm like, this is why I think I lean on Kindle more often than I used to, is because I can go instantly look at the reviews and decide whether or not I want to read it. So book cover first. The next thing people read is the back of the book blurb, which is on Amazon. It's the description. And then the third thing is reviews. Those are the things that you have to get in line. So part of your marketing. That's
Well,
where
and
marketing begins.
yeah, like for sure. I think
Mhm.
that if you are going to now be a little bit paranoid, well, how do I know? Am I an amateur book cover? How do I know that I've edited it enough? Um, well, don't isolate yourself.
Yeah.
Reach out and make some writing friends. Now,
Yes.
guess what? I have been meaning to go to the local book community meetup, but it happens like once a month, and the stars have not aligned for that to happen. But it's because my best and favorite, I don't want to say favorite, but okay, I found so many good people through the writing community. So even if you feel like you don't want anybody's input about your book, fine, but you will make really good friends. There's not a dud in the bunch.
Mhm.
Find a prayer partner, find somebody to critique your work, find somebody who knows better about covers. You probably don't want to ask, your well, some construction worker husbands might know, but you don't want to ask him, is this a good enough cover?
Right.
Because, especially for a genre that he does not read, he might
Right.
say, oh, it's beautiful. And I can't believe that. And especially, oh, your sweet parents and grandparents are going to be so impressed that you created that, right? Like they'll
Right.
want to hang it on their refrigerator. They'll be like, oh my goodness, look what my Susie was able to do. And they won't understand that you're trying to meet a particular goal with it,
Yes.
right? So find somebody who has a little bit of like,
And you can find those people online, um, AKA our Facebook group. But remember how we mentioned vetting earlier? You need to vet
yeah,
that too, because I've also been part of Facebook groups. I had to leave some Facebook groups, not because there was anything bad, but there's just bad advice being given. And I hated that I was always the one going in and saying, hold up, that's not true.
actually,
Because it was people that are not published and have
yeah,
not even finished their book, and they're giving advice like they are some sort of experts. Not that I mean, that's kind of the pot calling the kettle black, because we have always said we're not experts in
we are
anything.
not, we're
But
not.
but our Facebook group is full of people that are newbies, as well as people that are published, and some that are multi published, and we give
Mm-hmm.
advice accordingly, and you learn, and we have people that give good advice and that love each other. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, vet what group you're in, vet the people that you're around with, but don't isolate yourself for sure.
Mm-hmm. And there's a difference between wanting to help somebody to succeed and just wanting to control you. And I have like a detector for that that is
Mm,
just mad. And you want to become a little bit more careful to put your hands into those. Put your stuff into the hands of people who care about you and want your success, not just people who want you to do it their way. So anyway, try to be wise in
yep.
that regard.
But to sum all of this up, because it's time for us to move on, but just to know, mistakes do not define you or your writing life. They do
No.
not define your career or your future as an author. They're just mistakes. You learn from
Mhm.
them, you move on, and you don't make the same mistake again. But if you can look at others who have made mistakes and you can learn from them, even better, right? So again,
Mhm.
we keep plugging our group, but if if you're in our group, people will share things that they've gone through, or like ask questions, and we can learn from each other. So again, community is so important, and don't let your mistakes stop you from continuing to write the story that God's given you.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to share your mistakes, because who knows, you could be the person to help somebody else not make that mistake. So if that's the only good thing that comes out of a blunder, God can use it to teach and shape you and others.
Agreed. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to move on to our favorite part of the episode, the feeding of the
Yay!
backs. Yay.
All
Every
right.
week we write for 15 minutes to the same exact prompt, and then we share them here live, unaltered, unedited. So we only give positive and encouraging feedback. But it's our favorite time because it's so much fun. So, Jamie, why don't you share with us what the prompt was and what you wrote today?
Okay, so for the second Tuesday of the month, we like to have a sentence as our sprint prompt. Today's sentence is: she had watched it all unfold from a distance, quietly vowing to never make the same mistake. I did not include that in my prompt or my sprint. It was just the inspiration. Okay.
Okay.
So here we go. Dinner's almost ready. Murph said nothing. He sat hands clasped together over his belly, thumbs circling one another, staring at the ceiling. He therefore did not hear as much as he perceived 3 of his 4 children filing into the room to take their seats at the table. A bang from his right side caused him to jump a little in his seat, and he looked over into the adjoining kitchen at his wife, who had apparently just dropped something into the sink. Dang, Cat, you're like to wake the dead. His oldest giggled. Yeah, Mom, can you keep it down in there? Sorry, the pan was hot. Cat was rubbing her hand on her jeans. The other held a dish towel. Well, maybe next time you can use something a bit thicker than that to handle cast iron. Murph shook his head and locked eyes with his oldest, who laughed again. The littler boy was arranging his fork, knife, and spoon, as well as the condiments nearest to himself, in the pattern he liked. The girl sat with her elbows on the table, head in hands. No elbows on the table, Murph said. Where's your sister? Still upstairs, I guess. You guess? You don't know? The oldest boy chuckled at this. Yeah, Dad, that's where she is. I know. Want me to run and get her? Nah, she knows it's supper time. If she don't want to eat, it's on her. She's 5 years old, Murph, said Kat, depositing a bowl of salad on the table, then retreating to the fridge to grab a gallon of milk. And 5 is old enough to go without a meal as a consequence for ignorant behavior. Kat filled the glasses, returned the milk to the fridge, then sat and they all joined hands. Murph prayed and Kat filled the plates. Murph got his first and set 2. Where's the salt? Pass it to me. The littler boy picked it up, shook it over his plate, then passed it to his mother to be passed along to his dad, who did not take it. Kat set it before him and looked at her husband quizzically. You have enough salt on your food, champ? Murph said, in a tone that threatened violence. Yeah. The boy looked from his plate to his father, wondering what he had done wrong. Now, why did you sit there with your thumb up your rear end until I asked for the salt and then decide you needed to put some on your own food? Murph could feel hot anger in his face. The boy stammered and sputtered for a few seconds. Here, Kat said, I've got the remedy. She went to the kitchen range and returned with a second salt shaker. You keep that one at your end of the table. The kids and I will use this one. We'll set it up like this every night, okay? And then the timer went off.
Oh my gosh. Like, I'm so worried about that 5-year-old right now that, like, I can't even focus. Like, there's just so much happening in this story. Like, Merv just needs to be, so well written, Jamie, because I'm angry. Like, I want to step through this computer and shake this guy that doesn't even actually exist. So it's awesome. Really
Thanks,
well
I
done.
appreciate that.
The characters are alive. The language that you use and like you literally, like, the little boy has learned from his dad how to treat his mom. We already see that. The little girl has learned that she really doesn't have a place at the table, like, figuratively, and that she is, like, kind of pulling inside like the mom is. Like, yeah, so well written. Like, it makes me literally want to cry. Like,
I appreciate that. Yeah, the sprint prompt was like the little girl, she's observing this.
mm-hmm.
And you know what I mean? Like, and she's not going to want it.
Do you think that were you, like, getting to the sentence? Do you think that you were ever going to get to the sentence, or it was just an inspiration?
No, it was like, so again, if you're the girl with the elbows on the table,
Mm-hmm.
the sentence would be like something she would say to her therapist or her bestie when she got
Yeah.
older.
Yeah. Yeah, well written. Really well
Thank
done.
you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I love
Yay.
Friday.
Me too.
All right. What did you do with this sentence?
All right. Sorry.
Oh, you're sneezing. Christy says she needs a house coat with all of her mistakes people written on it. People can read her in real time. What a really good idea.
Yeah, that's awesome. I apologize. I have had something in my throat since right after we started, and it just, like, I think it's the weather change. We had quite the storm here last night, and I actually got an alert on my phone that the barometric pressure was dropping so much it might cause migraines, which I did have headaches all night last night, but I wasn't gonna miss today. But yeah, yeah. So I apologize for all the muting I have to do. I hopefully won't have to stop in the middle of this.
Wow, that's
Um,
crazy.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I am this is in the world of Widows of the West 2 with Charlotte and Shane, but this is Charlotte's perspective. I get nervous when there's a couple things happening in this. When I share something that I write from this book that I haven't had time to pray over and edit because it deals with things like slavery and like just the wordage and like so just know please know that I'm just this is getting vomiting the words on the page and I will go back and make sure that it is written the way like this may not represent my heart if that makes sense right and how it should be. I I'm sure it's fine. And then also I was running out of time so the end of it is like our sprint last week where you write with basically just dialogue. So this is
Mm.
okay. The signs were there, but in her defense, the signs were all around Marshall and no one seemed to notice, or at least no one wanted to admit it. The Confederacy had fallen, not only in battle, but in structure completely. Yet most good Southern gentlemen, those that returned home alive, that is, didn't want to acknowledge it. Many tried to go on with life as usual, and for a while it worked for some. Many continued to treat their slaves like property, although the Emancipation Proclamation gave every one of them their freedom. And because it was all they ever knew, some slaves decided to stay on, living life like President Lincoln hadn't set them free. Sometimes fear of the unknown is far less intimidating than the abuse you already know. Charlotte knew that all too well. But eventually, even the most timid of freed men and women, would say enough was enough. With more and more influence from the North flooding the state, it was a common sight to see a well to do family leaving town, heading who knows where with only a few trunks and the pride. Charlotte had watched the early crumbling of her society as she had known it and tried to ignore the growing dread in the pit of her stomach. She had watched it all unfold from a distance, quietly vowing never to make the same mistake. We should pay them, she had announced over dinner one night. Carlton didn't look up from his plate, and she wasn't certain he had ever heard her until he said quietly, "Pay who?" "The workers, the ones remaining. If we pay them, they will stay." "Pay them with what?" Charlotte laughed. "With money, of course. What a silly question." "We haven't any." "What do you mean we haven't any? I lived very economically while you were away, and you couldn't have possibly spent. We have lots of money, but it's worthless. Nobody will accept Confederate dollars. Three, two,
Mm.
one.
Ooh, no, I think that like from a historical perspective, maybe researching, I don't even know, but like I didn't feel anything whatever. Like
Mhm.
it felt fine. And it's really interesting to think about what these people endured. And you know, we just had a mental health awareness event yesterday at my workplace, and these people did not have therapy, and they all went through that. Like
Right.
imagine. I mean, not to
Yeah.
mention the ones who went to war and saw people get blown up and had to saw
Mhm.
off, you know, people's legs and all of that stuff. Like, that's a very stressful time for some people who proved to be pretty resilient.
Yeah.
And I think that that's captured here.
Thanks.
Um, and then I really, I know it's horrible to say, but excited to read the next piece, which would obviously be her gut wrenching reaction to, like, I took measures to keep this from happening and now our money is worthless. Like,
Yeah.
that's going to be feelings happening in that.
So
So, really good lead up to something pretty poignant, I'm sure.
thanks. I think the balance with writing this book is to show Charlotte and those kind of around her as sympathetic without justifying, right? Like
It's
they
difficult.
believed what they were doing was right. They believed that the North was evil. Do you know what I'm saying? Um, without justifying like some of their actions. So like to show them broke and to show that like yeah, I have a whole lot of things moving around in my head. But again, you also again like that book I read that was just so offensive. I didn't read the whole book. Um I don't want to do that. I want to be true to the history, but also true to the people, because history is subjective to who's telling you the history. I learned that in college, and it's such a great lesson to learn that if you were to sit with somebody who fought for the North and somebody who fought for the South, they're going to talk about the same war, and they're both are going to be true, but they're both going to be totally different. So yeah. All right. Thanks.
All right. Well, I don't really have time for a what's next. I want to say goodbye and that I love you all, and I'm going to have to dip out. So bye.
Bye, everyone. And I'm going to say goodbye as well. My what's next is really just working on cover still. And we appreciate you guys all. And we'll see you in the Facebook group. But
See you. Bye.
bye. Until next week, may your pen be prolific and your deadlines be met. And may all of your words honor Christ. Bye, everyone.